Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm so excited because I have two of my very favorite people, personally and professionally speaking, on the podcast with me this time. Laura Spillman is here and Elena Kopf is here. Laura, you go first. Tell people about you.
Oh, hi.
She's
I'm
eating ice
Laura,
cream.
and I'm eating my favorite chocolate cookie dough ice cream. Well, I am celebrating my 35th year in early childhood.
Woo!
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So, I've done a myriad of things in my career. I am currently a director for La Petite Academy here in Evansville. It is a managed care site for the one of the local hospitals here, so we only serve hospital employees. But I've done a lot of training, a lot of technical assistance. I've worked predominantly in the infant toddler field for about 14 years. So that's just a little bit about me. I still love doing podcasts. I still love doing presentations. So
We just love
That's me.
talking.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Elena, your turn.
All right, great. Thank you. My name's Elena, and I have been in ECE for 20 years now.
We're old.
I know I'm getting up there. Most of my years have been with toddlers. They are my absolute favorite people. Right now I am working at an at-work site at a university. So 99% of our clientele are children of professors and the like. But yeah, I get to spend every day with 10 little sweet faces, and I love it.
Yay. So people who've listened before know that Laura and I have known each other for a long time. Elena and I have worked together several years ago for a while. She was an infant teacher in the center where I was the director.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went on to be a director and now working with toddlers, which is, I think, where she belongs, even though I thought she was a great director. So,
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm very happy to be back in the classroom. Actually.
Yay, me too. That's a whole other podcast, though. It was an adjustment for me when I went back into the classroom.
It was a huge adjustment,
Yeah,
but I'm grateful for it. But yeah,
me too. Whole other topic. Okay, so we're gonna start. I'm gonna read the quote, and then I'll kind of talk about why I decided it would be great to get Laura and Elena together to talk about this. So this is from a book called Babies in the Rain by Jeff Johnson, and the quote is, "I've met too many caregivers who feel that they are the center of a child's learning universe because they are the teacher. The focus revolves around what they are doing to make learning happen. The best teachers set the stage and then fade into the background, making themselves available when needed. We have to remember that we are not leading the dance." So I like this quote because I've been getting lots of messages and emails from people who are trying to do, they want to do good things for toddlers, and they're having a difficult time shifting from the mindset and the strategies they used with preschool children now that they're down with 1 and 2 year olds. So
That's exactly right. It's not watered down preschool at all. And I think that's where the struggle comes from, is because we think about, as a whole, the school system, and there are certain ways that we teach in that system, and 1-year-olds who are just out of infancy do not learn that way.
Yeah. And adults get frustrated then because what they're trying isn't working because it doesn't fit what they need.
I always kind of thought that it seemed odd to me that the minute really a baby turns 12 months old, like all of a sudden all these expectations changed. So like just because we stopped snapping up their pants in the crotch or whatever, and they started having like an actual button and real shoes, and all of a sudden like we were making them do all these unrealistic things, like sit and listen to a circle time, and all of a sudden get on this really rigid schedule where in most infant rooms, hopefully the babies have their own schedule. I eat when I want, I sleep when I want, I do what I want when I want, kind of thing. And I think teachers think like all of a sudden they're in this toddler room. It's like boot camp all of a sudden,
Yes.
And
boot camp
they
for the
just-
real world, Laura.
For the real world. Oh,
We are
man.
not
they just
babies
don't function that
anymore.
way. They still have that need to have those individual needs met and not to be on this, crazy schedule. Now, some of them naturally get there. They naturally start taking one nap a day and all of that. But it just seems like there's no transition. It's just, you're in the infant room where it's all snuggly and you can do whatever you want. And then you go in the toddler room and it's like, that's not the way we work,
Right.
And it's a very hard transition.
It's
for
a super
the
hard
majority of
transition.
infants. And I mean, it takes an adjustment. I would say on average, infants to toddlers, I have seen the transition take a month or longer for them to say, oh, this is what we're doing now.
And a lot of places, and I want to get to the idea of the dance, and I want to specifically, Elena, ask you some stuff here in a minute, but what is even more mind-boggling to me is the places that start training their babies for the 1-year-old room.
Yeah.
Like put them on a cot suddenly, because in a month you're going to have to move over to that room and start using the same sippy cup they use in the 1-year-old room, and all that kind of like training them to get ready to be in. So it's not even that the adjustment starts to take place once they've moved. It's, again, this idea of, so now we're watering down toddlerhood for babies because they're going to be toddlers someday.
Yeah. I think it's that whole like getting ready for mindset that we're not just present with children, that we're always getting ready for the next thing. We're getting ready to go to the toddler room, getting ready to go to the 2-year-old room. Why don't we just value where they are right now and just be there? Just be there.
Yeah. So I've heard it, caring for infants and for toddlers compared to a dance a lot. And I don't dance, so I don't really know. Other than that, maybe we're following each other's lead. Like when you go this way, I go this way, and then I come back this way and you come back this way. You guys are dancers. Talk to me about that. Why is it a dance?
Toddler dancing is the best dancing in the world.
Oh my
And all
God.
you do is stand there and mimic what they do.
I know.
And it's beautiful, and they feel that beat.
We've all seen those videos of like the aerobics class where everybody just does what a toddler is doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like the most intense workout they've ever had because they're
Yep.
just doing everything, all the movements. Okay, so Elena, would you talk to us about what your day with toddlers looks like? And you're with 1-year-olds specifically, right? Or like a younger toddler?
I am in a 1-year-old classroom. Currently, 5 out of 10 children are, well, the 5th one is about to be 2 on Wednesday. So I'll have 5 2-year-olds and 5 1-year-olds. So it is an older class right now, but on average, the class is from 12 to 24 months.
So can I interrupt for just a second? Sorry. Because I want to acknowledge that if for programs that are doing like a continuity of care, these transitions are probably not as drastic. And we know that this doesn't describe every program, but I think there's still a majority of programs who have this age division.
Yes.
And yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge that and move. Okay, so Elena, what's your day like?
Well, we do have a daily schedule, and for the most part, it's based around meal times, because we know that our meals are on the same schedule as the rest of the age groups, barring the infants, of course. And so we have snack at 9:30, and then we do quote unquote activities with them, and we free play. However, in the toddler world, it all just kind of looks like the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that's one place where a lot of people get, one of the most difficult things is for the people who have to do like a lesson plan. And they're thinking about activities for toddlers. And that is a hard thing to do because they don't, they're not going to all sit at the table and make a recognizable product like some people think of when they're thinking of an activity or a lesson plan kind of thing. So
I try to help people think of it more instead of activities, but just experiences with it, with toddlers. And just that helps with, because when I think of activities, I always think there's sort of this end result. So a lot of times when I'm talking with my toddler teachers, I talk about them giving them experiences. And, what experience is it that we're going to be, doing today? And, our schedules are kind of broken out into chunks. So like here from like 9 to 12, here are some things that you're going to see happen. They're probably going to go outside. They may go to the activity room for some extra gross motor. They might do something sort of teacher led, but it's done in a small group. So, I think it's a combination of looking at your schedule in more sort of chunks of the day, and then kind of thinking more about experiences versus having activities.
So Elena, when you said the activities and the free play all kind of look like the same thing, what does that mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with Laura in the experiences. We do have lesson plans in the classroom that I work in. We are, in my opinion, we're blessed to have what we call an emergent curriculum, which means basically we observe the children to see what they are doing and how they are doing it and what they're interested in. And then we base our lesson plans off of those interests. So that's already setting us ahead for success, because we know that they're going to be interested. So we have a variety of manipulatives out for the children to use whenever they feel like it, but we also offer experiences at the table that I don't want to say more structured, but this is what we're going to be doing at the table at this time. We're painting, or we're working with glue, or we've got all the Play-Doh tools out right here, that sort of thing.
Yep. Yeah, that's similar to what we do.
So I was just asked about paint. That was one of the questions. Was someone asked me if having paint out with toddlers was realistic, and I think she was talking about sort of having it out in an arts center where it was always available, which I think can work. It takes a lot of work to get it to a point where it can work without being sort of hovered over all the time,
right?
By adults. But so Elena, when you paint with your toddlers, how's it go? What's it look like, or what do you do with them?
Well, it really depends on the day. We do it a variety of different ways, and it depends on how many are interested, and what kind of tools we're going to be using. We could use our easel, and that's more for 1 or 2 children to be painting, and that's full body. That's paintbrush, smock. They're going to go from the top to the bottom, and they could stand there as long as they want to stand there. I've had some children stay for 15 minutes, and when they're done, they are covered head to toe in paint. It is not uncommon at all. Also, we have smaller scale painting where if you're a good multitasker, you're able to have 4 or 5 children sitting at a table with their paper in front of them and a little styrofoam bowl of paint for them to hold, each one of them to hold with their own paintbrush, and them able to paint whatever they want to. And when they're done, they get up and wash their hands and they're done. And that could take anywhere from 1 or 2 minutes up to 10, as long as they decide that they want to paint, they can.
Yeah.
And
if they don't want to paint, they aren't.
No, absolutely not. This is life is supposed to be fun. Everything is a brand new experience. And so why would I, as a quote unquote teacher, want to shove something at them that they're not ready for? And I do have a little boy right now who is absolutely not interested in anything sensory, to the point that you say, would you like to paint? And he literally walks backward, shaking his head.
Poor baby.
We're like, okay, never mind. But then over the weeks and months of watching everyone else do it, within the last week or two, he's been starting to participate. So that's pretty exciting for him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can I give you one of my favorite tips with toddlers and paint?
Yeah.
I got this a long time ago, and it's just one of my tried and true, like, for those teachers who really, really struggle with like getting out paint. So you take your cups and you cut a circle of a sponge to fit in the bottom of your cup, and you soak that sponge with some paint, and they can dip their brush in and get it on the sponge.
Oh yeah.
And that way, when they don't get globs and globs of paint, it gives them just enough that they can brush it on some paper and it's not this giant mess. Because I think what happens is we're really afraid of like the big mess.
Yeah. Some people are. Yeah.
Some people are. Some people aren't. Some people aren't. But I know that in the past, some of the toddler teachers I've worked with, it's always been like, you know, I don't know how to handle the mess when I'm still trying to handle the kids. And, you know, when one person does it, it's like, you know, they all herd together, because then like all of a sudden you have 6 toddlers like, oh, paint, you know?
Yeah.
So it's
and
really hard to manage. And that's when you and your co-teacher need to have some really good communication on how you're going to work it out. But that sponge trick works really well.
Yeah. And I think those are two, we just had 2 really good examples of the idea of following the child's lead in this dance metaphor or whatever. So one is Elena, what you were talking about with the emergent curriculum, where you're only planning for things that you've seen interest in. And again, watching how they're using the paint then. And some of them don't want to do it, and we respect that. And others want to do it for 20 minutes. And as much as we can, we respect that and we allow that. And but even Laura, when you're talking about, you know, maybe your co-teacher's not as comfortable with the mess as you are, and how do we work through that? I think that's part of the dance of being in a toddler room too.
I think that's a huge part of the dance, is that you and whoever you're with, you know, have those conversations. You know, are you involving your co-teacher in those lesson plans? You know, so that you could talk about, well, hey, this is the day I was thinking about getting out, you know, the paint and doing some work around, you know, color mixing maybe. You know, how do you want to be involved in that? Or if I'm over here with a couple, would you be fine, you know, just kind of, you know, being involved and interacting in them, you know, working around the room kind of thing.
I was really bad at that when I had co-teachers. I just kind of brought out the mess and just knew that I would be the one cleaning it up, and if they didn't want to be there, that was fine, but I wasn't very good at preparing.
And see, that's what I would say is probably,
though.
Yeah. What, Elena?
I would say that's probably the most important aspect of the dance, is dancing with your co-teacher. Because in my toddler world, I know that the 10 of them, are in charge. And we're just here to navigate the situation. And so if she and I are able to dance together appropriately without stepping on each other's toes, it makes everything so much more smooth. But with painting, again, and sensory, I would say if you're afraid of it, the best thing to do would be do it every single day.
Immersion therapy.
I mean, if you can paint and have your water table or your rice table, or have 2 mutually exciting activities open at the same time, and you do it every single day, it's not going to be as crazy as the first time.
Yeah, because Laura, you talked about how when the paint's out, they all want to be in the paint. And so that's a really good idea, is to make sure that we have, it's not just one new exciting thing available.
And that's usually like, especially when I was working as a coach for Paths to Quality, you know, one of the pieces of criteria is in the toddlers and twos is that they had, you know, these materials available for young children and accessible. And that was one that we always had to work a lot on, because they're like, well, I get out the markers, and then all of a sudden, like, there's markers everywhere and they all want them. And which that's probably true because it's new and it's exciting. So if it does become just part of your daily routine that, after you've cleaned up after breakfast and children are finding things to do, that you're always getting out the markers and have multiple tubs of markers, then it doesn't become like this new exciting experience. And sure, they might all want to come and sit down. That's cool. Then do that for a while, and then all of a sudden they're going to find other things that they want to do. That it's really this very delicate balance of really paying attention to what they want to do, offering things that are exciting and new. And sometimes for toddlers, they're new every day, but it's the same thing. I mean,
as soon as you mentioned markers, I thought, the other concern that people have is that everything goes in their mouth.
Yep.
And that's another conversation I've had recently with someone about talking about a toddler room, because they wanted to know how to teach toddlers not to put things in their mouth. And I said, you're kind of looking at it backwards. We know that they put things in their mouth, and that's how they learn. So then our role in the dance is to make sure that everything in our room is safe if it does go in the mouth, and that we have a plan to clean it after it's been in the mouth, and we don't freak out in the middle.
Right. Usually, we always had our yuck bucket, and the yuck bucket had like a little yuck face kind of thing. And if they mouth something, we would let them experience that and just be like, okay, you can go throw it in the bucket. And then that's kind of fun too.
Yeah, right. That's part of it.
And I mean, if we know that that's the way that they're exploring, and we know that that's the way that they're learning about what this object is and how this object moves in space. And when we take those things out of their mouth, we're just interrupting that learning process. So it's kind of like if I'm sitting in a training and I've got a pen in my mouth, and I'm, chewing on it, and I'm really listening to somebody, and somebody walks up to me and takes that pen out of my mouth without saying anything.
That's
one,
gross,
it's disrespectful.
Yeah,
it's disrespectful. And two, it interrupted my thought process.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's just that whole analogy of, would we ever do that to an adult? No. So then why is it okay that we do it to young children?
Yeah.
And Laura, if you keep putting that pen in your mouth, you're not going to be able to take notes anymore. That's right.
That's right. They took away my thing.
So I remember, I'm going to switch gears for just a second. When I was first working with 2-year-olds, which was one of my first age groups, I was with 3-year-olds for 6 months. And then my first real full-time job in a childcare center was with 2-year-olds. And I remember thinking, all we do all day long is feed them and clean them and change them, and feed them and clean them and change them. And I was like, when do I get to the teaching? And I've heard that from people since then too. And it resonates because I remember being that way. So can we talk about how those routine times can be really valuable times, and reframing that?
I would say the teaching is every moment of every day. The teaching is the eye contact that you have with that child from across the room when you say, I think it's time to change your diaper. Are you ready? And they look at you and they go, no. And they point to their friend. That's a teachable moment. You can say it without using the words, with only body language and eye contact. You can say, okay, I understand what you're telling me, and I respect your decision, and I'm going to give you 2 more minutes, and then we're going to change your diaper.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just the way we talk to them during those routine times, the eye contact is huge. Just keeping in mind that we can choose to be respectful or not respectful, and think about what children learn from each of those, what they might learn about themselves and our relationship if I'm disrespectful during that time, as opposed to what they could learn about relationships if I'm respectful during those routine times.
I think
huge.
with diapering too is viewing it as something you're doing with a child, not to a child. So that really is sort of this partnership, and that there is so many concepts that we can look at through a diapering procedure, like okay, what's the word I'm looking for? So there's some predictability there.
Yeah.
There's, this is, we always do this first, we do this second, we do this third, so that there's some predictability in that routine.
Uh-huh.
Could be talking to the child about what color clothing they have on that day, or the color pants they have on. Looking in the mirror, counting fingers, counting toes. I mean, there's so many ways that you can extend this opportunity where you're not just diapering a child.
Yeah.
You are really having this experience with them.
And I've heard people describing that process, but their goal in that process is to distract the child and get them through the diaper change quickly.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being with them and going slowly, sure
Right.
that it's not a dehumanizing experience for the one
Right.
on the table with their butt in the air.
Right. I mean, it's such a vulnerable position that you have that child in. And I mean, when you really stop and think about that, I mean, they're in an open environment. Other children can see them. Other adults, if they walk in the room, can see them. I mean, really, when I think about it, it almost just kind of I have like a real visceral reaction when I think about that, because they're so vulnerable. Yeah. So let's make this experience as loving and respectful as we possibly can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're three grown-up women. I assume that we've all three had a pap smear at some point in our life.
Yeah.
And think about the position that we're in and how that would feel if that was just a public forum with everybody commenting.
I know.
Repeatedly throughout the day.
Right. And then even making comments about like, oh, that poop is gross. Or, whatever. So like then on top of being in a vulnerable position, we're also telling you what you just did was gross.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's
if your doctor is pushing on your knees and saying, come on, just over with.
Yeah. Come on. All right. That was a weird turn.
It's like, I digress.
I think we all agree we had to go there.
Yes.
Okay. Elena, what?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what else do you love about your days with toddlers?
I love that everything is brand new to them. And when you're looking at teaching, and I was thinking about the quote that you gave us, and it made me think about I call him my little engineer, because he is just on top of scientifically exploring everything you give him. And one day we brought in a pool noodle, and the pool noodle, as you might believe it or not, but it was not immediately a sword. It was a vacuum. And the vacuum went up in the corners of the room to get all the cobwebs. And it went in the windowsills, and then it turned into a leaf blower. And so just seeing this one item, which in my mind is a pool noodle.
Right, with one use.
Probably a half an hour of him exploring every single way to use it and hitting it on every single surface to see what the different noises were and what the different reactions from everyone was. It was just, it was really beautiful. It was one of those moments where you stand against the counter with your coffee and just observe, because he is in control and he's got this.
Awesome. And your coffee, of course, is in a safe cup with a tight fitting lid.
Yes.
Didn't want anyone worrying about Elena and her coffee with the toddlers. That just describes such a different adult perspective than I think what a lot of people think of when they think about teaching toddlers. And just the fact that they think so much differently because it is brand new for them, and they have to explore it in ways that we wouldn't even think about having to explore because it's so long ago that we had that, that experience. We're so far removed from that we really do have to just lean up against the counter physically or metaphorically with our coffee and pay attention to what's going on so that we know how to respond.
And when you really, really pay attention and just stand back and observe, it's
beautiful and amazing the conversations and just world that the community that they have created amongst themselves. You can see them walk to each one and discuss whatever it is they're discussing. And then they'll go up to the next one and say, well, what do you think about this idea? And of course, none of those words are there, but they know exactly what they're talking about. So they are not random. They are large and in charge.
That's right. And I'm thinking now about ways they non-verbally are saying, what do you think about this idea? And it could just be loading a bucket full of blocks and carrying it over to somebody else, or banging a block on the floor together, or there's just pinching,
raising their eyebrows and smiling.
Just making faces at each other. Sometimes it's the way they touch and interact with each other, and we think it's aggression when it's just exploration. That's a little bit clumsy.
They're just trying to figure out, you're in my space and I don't want you there, so I'm gonna make sure that you're not.
Exactly.
So.
Elena, do you have anything else in your notes that we didn't talk about?
Well, actually, Heather, I do.
What should we talk about now?
Well, I was thinking, and of course I don't know the exact words, but we've all seen the quote, be careful what you teach because it will interfere with what they're learning.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really big in the toddler world. I think that teachers are so accustomed to feeling like they have to work really hard with beautiful lesson plans and lots of activities and prepared materials. And that is not the toddler world, because all they need is an idea and a few paper towel rolls.
Paper towel rolls, yes.
And they will get it. They'll figure out what they need to do with that. And then that's how you know what you're teaching and what they're learning and how to expand on that.
And sometimes it's the questions. Like I still am so prone to do this, where I'll start just like, what are you doing? What are you making? What color is that? What are you going to do next? Just let me learn. Stop asking me questions and just let me learn.
That's right.
Yep. That's all part of following their lead. You don't have to ask a zillion questions.
It's just so ingrained in all of us to do it.
It really
is. It's hard to stop.
I'm guilty of it too. I'm totally guilty of it too. But it's, for some reason, we all just have a really hard time just slowing down and just letting them be them. Like, we feel like we have to constantly be like talking and engage and engage and engage and engage. And I think, there is a time to just sit back and just observe quietly.
So, Laura, there was something you were talking about earlier that I wanted to come back to. Oh my gosh, it's gone.
Oh no.
Well, that's great podcast. I don't remember what it was. All right, it's gone. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sure it was like really insightful and it was going to be the best story yet, but I don't remember what it was now. I'm sorry.
I think the other thing too that's really super important is that sometimes you just have to, because it's really, really hard for people to step outside their comfort zone. And working with toddlers really pushes you. I think it pushes some people outside their comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And so it's really, truly okay to just start with very simple things that are easy, that are not messy, and that gives them a nice experience,
Paper towel tubes.
Yeah. So like, if paint, you want to do it, but it makes you nervous, stick it in a Ziploc baggie, tape it to the table, and let them experience it that way. It's not the most eloquent thing, but they're still going to have a great time doing it, and you gave them a valuable experience, and it wasn't super messy. So it didn't push you too far out of your comfort zone. Start small.
I think that's good advice. Yeah. Yep.
Well, along with that, I just pose a question. What would happen if your painting did get messy? I mean, is the world going to end? What's going to happen is you're going to spend from 9:30 until lunchtime cleaning up, but that's also part of the learning experience.
It's true.
For the adults and the children. I mean, no one comes out of that experience the same. We all have learned something.
Washcloths afterward is just as important as the paint everywhere.
Sure.
Yeah, I learned that.
I have a teacher that just because I know the frustration level, and especially if I have a new teacher that maybe, here comes my cat. That if it's going to allow them at least a little bit of freedom without frustration, I'm okay with that.
Sure. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think that's one of the things that, people might hear, oh yes, I'm just going to do messy paint tomorrow and it's going to be great. And then the morning ends in tears and they never try it again.
Right.
So there's that. But like I'm with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds now, but they were painting with roller painters one day and on big pieces of paper on the table. And I turned around to the cupboard to get more paper. And when I came back around, they were just painting the tabletops with the roller. And it was brown and it was, not beautiful because it was all the colors mixed together by then. But they were so pleased with themselves, and they sang a song that they made up about painting on the table, and that's all they talked about the rest of the day, and that's the first thing they talked to their parents about. And I just got a bunch of paper towels and wiped that table down when it was done and gave it a deeper clean later, and it was very manageable despite the chaotic appearance of it. So I am getting better at that sort of massive mess cleanup.
That's awesome.
What's really good though for it's messy but it's not messy is the cornstarch and water.
Oh yeah,
it's so easy to clean up.
And it sticks.
It feels like a mess, but it's like, oh look, just brush it off with a broom and it's gone.
Yeah. Do you know though, I can't touch that.
I can't.
There's like a squeakiness to it that I cannot handle.
It makes a weird.
But I can put the things down and let everybody else mess with it and play with it. But I can't touch it.
I love pushing it on the table.
It's making my skin crawl.
It gives me chill bumps just thinking about cornstarch. I can't. It's like that, and it's also that like liquid borax stuff.
Oh God! So we know Elena's bringing cornstarch to the next hotel party at the conference.
Oh my gosh!
She's gonna make us play with it.
I wonder how much cornstarch it would take to fill the bathtub.
Oh my God, a lot. It would take a lot. Well, you try that and then report back.
I will.
We'll have pictures.
I will document and I will add foundations.
Would you make a nice documentation panel about filling your bathtub with cornstarch?
I will.
This feels like a good place to end the podcast. This was really great. I think people are going to like this. I'm so glad that you both were able to share your stories and your enthusiasm. And Elena, it's so rare for me to hear someone talk about working with toddlers as beautiful. and I am grateful that you told those stories. So, you guys have any last thoughts before we're done?
I would say just look at them as who they are. They are just on the verge of making a whole lot of decisions and explorations and realizations, and that's an amazing thing.
And that reminds me, I was going to circle back to what Laura said about getting ready for syndrome, but we don't have time to get into it now. But I just wanted on the record that I eventually remembered what I was going to ask about.
Good job.
All right, thanks. Well, I'll leave that on the list for the next podcast. Laura, did you have anything? Yeah, did you have anything, Laura?
No. Okay. I think about a quote from J. Ron Lally, who just passed away not too long ago.
So sad.
And he's kind of one of my early childhood. He really is my infant toddler early childhood hero. And one of their quotes that came out of PITC was, infant and toddler care is not school and it's not babysitting. It's really a special kind of care that resembles no other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really important to remember, that with toddlers, it really still very much is about that relationship, and it's really about that routine care, and then embedding all that wonderful knowledge and learning within all of those things.
Yes. This makes me miss working with toddlers. Okay. Thank you to both, and thanks everybody for listening. I hope you'll come back again for another episode. Goodbye.
Bye.